Hey everyone, I am Assistant Pastor Dinah Ramos. I come from the Full Gospel Holiness Church. We're located in Wilson, Florida. The founder of the church is Bishop Lester House. The pastor is Pastor Juan Ramos, and I'm Assistant Pastor Dinah Ramos. So today's Bible lesson is called Noah Found Grace in the Eyes of the Lord. Noah, if you remember, and even with children's Bible studies, we recall about, all you are really reminded of is this big boat and a whole bunch of animals stuck inside this boat while there being a big flood. But there's more to the story than just all these animals shoved in there. There was a reason why that came about. God had said, and as he's seen today, as we see the world as sin has progressed even more, how great the sin is and how the Lord has been so gracious in giving the word for many people to hear it. There comes a time and a place for there to be judgment. And therefore, in that time and place, there was a big, great judgment. And the judgment that took place, of course, was a flood. But it wasn't just, sporadic. It wasn't just out of the blue. God provided many times and many chances for the people to get right. They had all those years. They had all that time in that span of time while Noah was instructed by God to build this ark, this boat. And even with all that he did, and they are seeing him do it, they, instead of going to the Lord and seeking God's grace, they instead mocked God. They mocked Noah. They mocked the whole thing, and they continue to live in their sins. They continue to live in their lifestyles and reject God. So that is a little bit like what we see today. It's just a lot worse. And there isn't going to be any flood that's going to judge the earth. No. But with Noah, he did find grace in the eyes of the Lord. He was separate from everyone else. He was righteous. He lived for God. He loved God. He showed his love for God. And even with that whole span of years, as he was taking place, making that big boat, imagine the amount of criticism. Imagine the amount of mockery and scolding that these people did upon Noah. And he still continued to be instructed by God and to do as God said, because he loved God and he remembered all the good things that God has done for him and has continued to do for him. So that is the same as what we see today, is that as we live in this world, many will look and say, well, we've heard about the end of times for all these years, and we're still here today. The thing is that as you read the Bible, you read from Revelations, you go all through that. Even with Matthew's, it talks about the end times, as that we see the prophecies are being fulfilled. These things had to take place. It took these years for everything to come together. There was a reason why we had to wait until now. Everything had to conspire. Everything had to be in God's plan and in his will. So within these years, people either went to the Lord or they turned away from God. They say, oh, well, all these years was talked about this and they talked about that, but we're still here today. But do you see the times that are a lot worse than what we imagined and what we experienced than we did years ago? Nothing that, everything that we see now was in secrecy or hidden or wasn't as extreme as the years previous. But we see that it's open. Sin has been an open door. It is a lot worse and it's expanded. So, and people are okay with it, because once you get accustomed to something and it's surround you so many times and you don't do anything about it, you get used to it. You get accustomed to it and it becomes your new life and your new way of life. So that is what we see that's occurring in this world today. And Satan knows what he's doing, because Satan, how he does things, he doesn't do things just out of the blue. No, it takes time. It's gradual. There's this show that I used to love watching. It's called The Office, and it's like dry humor. It's funny, but anyway, one of the characters went and did a joke on this person that was in the office. The one that was in the office, he was kind of like a know-it-all type of thing. So this other employee wanted to do a joke on him, because he was just like, you know what, let me do this. Let's see if this works. So every day they had regular telephone. Every day he would add a little bit of weight to that telephone, each and every day. And he didn't notice how heavy, as it got heavier each day, this employee. So as he kept doing it every day, then there was a point that employee that was doing the joke, immediately took all those weights out of that phone. So when he went to go pick up the phone that one time, he hurried up and hit his face because he wasn't expecting it. It was just out of the blue. He's like, oh my gosh, what happened? Why is it coming abruptly to my face? Because he did it gradual. He didn't notice it because it was gradual. That is what Satan does in this life and in this world. He does things gradual. He gets right under your skin. He gets right in there, deep in there, without you realizing it because you're not paying attention. So with this, as we're bringing the topic in, Noah found grace in the Lord, in the eyes of the Lord. He continued each day as if it was just like any other day. And even if people went against him and criticized him and mocked him, he continued to live his life for the Lord. And that is where God found favor. He found favor in God's eyes. Noah did. And God truly loved Noah and showed forth to people how righteous he was. So even with all the criticism, okay, even with all that time span and people thinking it's just never going to happen, the Lord, as we are believers, the Lord helps us and strengthens us each day so that we don't give up. Because there's going to be points where you feel disappointed or you feel like, is there anything coming out of this? And we all feel that. And it doesn't matter regardless of what we do. Whenever you put your work in something and you think to yourself, it's taken this long, or I don't feel like there's any improvement or anybody's recognizing it. Don't worry, because the most important, the one that really matters, is the one that truly pays close attention to those details. So God, when it comes to us as believers, a lot of times we feel defeated. And even when we give the word to people or we share the news and witness to others, we feel like it's not setting in, but it is setting in. Just like I talked about the brain, how the brain receives things. You may not think that you're listening and you may not think that you're receiving it and retaining that knowledge, but it's in there. It's just then when time goes on, something triggers that memory and it comes to the front lobe of your brain. It's just how it works. But as we see how God works with that, then we know how Satan works with that as well. So anyway, going back here, I'm going to go to Genesis chapter 6, and I'm going to read for verse 8. So Genesis chapter 6, and I'm going to read from verse 8. And I'll read verse 9 too. So Genesis chapter 6, verse 8 and 9 says, "But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man, perfect in his generations, and Noah walked with God." So as I've talked about how being perfect, your first initial thought is perfect. Your first initial thought is no mistakes, nothing in between. Your cut corners, everything. You were just clean and everything, But the perfect that God represents in the Bible, because he knows that we're flesh and blood, as I talked about in our past Bible study this week, is that our flesh and the spirit, how they clash. But knowing as us as believers and knowing that we are in these fleshly bodies, we have to go to the Lord for strength and for guidance to help us overcome those obstacles in our life, because we will find them. Each and every one of us will find them. Knowing that as long as we are in this world, we are tied to this world by our flesh, right? We have emotions, we have feelings, we have things that come against us, temptations, all those things all in one. And we understand that and we acknowledge that. And that's the most important thing, is to acknowledge that. Well, with Noah, as he was a just man, perfect in his generations. Remember, in his generation, in the people that were there among him, they all lived in a very chaotic, riotous life. They loved their sin. They loved living in their sin. They loved doing and partaking in those sins. And when Noah was doing this and following the instructions from God, they went against him. They criticized him, mocked him, and they continued on their ways. So based on everyone else, Noah in God's eyes was a righteous man. And in that righteousness, it was his dedication, his love, his faithfulness. He continued to live for the Lord and strive each day. And in that perfectness, that is you taking the effort each day. Because we all say, oh my gosh, I can't be perfect. Nobody's perfect. If you look upon our flesh and you look upon, what we can do and in our abilities, everybody's different. Everyone has their certain talents and abilities. So a lot of times, we tend to look at that. Like I myself, I've struggled through many years with my own, self-consciousness, okay? And that starts from just a child having learning disability. Even as an adult today, there's times that I'll say to myself, and that's my first initial thought, and it's the flesh. Of course, it's natural. I'll say, man, this might be a little bit too hard for me. I don't know. This is overwhelming, but I have to step back. A lot of times when I get like that, I have to step back and I have to reevaluate what is given to me. And it's work, it's things just even in your daily life, decision making. I mean, all that. First things first, I have to reflect and I have to just say, God, please just provide me the knowledge, provide me the instruction of what to do next. I don't know what to do next. I need your help. But a lot of times there will be those occasions where it's just in us. We can't help it. We tend to compare ourselves with other people. We tend to say, oh, well, I don't speak as much as they do. I don't speak as eloquent as that person over there. I'm not as knowledgeable as this person over here. Well, if you compare yourself and you continue to do that, you're going to fail. Okay? If you're focusing on those very things and not focusing on the one that lives within you and there for you and strengthening you, then you're automatically going to fail. We tend to do that. And I was thinking about that the other day. It was yesterday. And, I was just saying to myself, I got to stop comparing myself to other people because you get like that. You can't help it. It's just in your flesh, especially when you're having difficulties in something, depending on what you're dealing with or what you're working on. You tend to say to yourself, man, if it was that person, they would have done it faster. You have to, okay, stop. So this perfect, when God talks about perfect in the Bible, it is taking that effort, that initial effort. Your heart has to be in it, okay? As long as your heart is in it, your integrity, all those very things, all in that, when living for Christ, that is what he means by being perfect, okay? Is that you're taking those efforts each and every day. You're striving. Your heart is in it 100%, not half-heartedly, not a quarter of the way, but 100%. You're in it, okay? So when God sees that dedication, that love, and just that initial initiation that you're acknowledging the Lord in all the things you do, that is where he finds where that's perfect in his eyes. So Noah lived for God, okay? And every day he took the very things that he did and everything that was brought before him, he brought it before the Lord. And he would acknowledge God. He worshiped and served God. So therefore, Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Okay? And just as we see this from Old Testament, this applies to us today too. As a believer, we tend to have that thought in our mind, oh, well, we compare ourselves to others, or we feel to ourselves when there is a struggle and we all have trials and difficulties, we automatically think maybe this is too great for me. I don't know. Well, that's where God comes in. You say, God, you didn't put this in front of me for me to fail. There's a reason. Or sometimes we can't help it. We put ourselves in those situations. We put too much work on ourselves and we say, oh, well, I knew that was a mistake. So sometimes we learn those lessons in hand. You've got to pace yourself. I know we only have so many hours in the day. So that's where that not anxiety, but just that anticipation, okay, that we say to ourselves, oh my gosh, we got to get this done. We only have this. Sometimes you just got to pace yourself and bring it before the Lord to help you in your needs, because God says, ask and it shall be given to you. Knock and the door shall be opened. Nothing is too hard for God. Nothing is too complex and too difficult for him. In fact, everything in his hands, when it's through his hands, he'll make it possible. Things that are impossible to us that are clearly, if it's depending on what it is, if it's too great for us, we know that we can bring it before the Lord. If it's meant, he's going to let it go, see it through. If it's not, he's going to stop it right then and there. And he's going to make sure he tells us too. Because sometimes, like I said, that's where the flesh and the spirit clash. And that's where I brought from our Bible study from Wednesday. I said, our flesh and the spirit, they do clash. They're not the same. That's what holds us and reminds us how dependent we must be upon the Lord. And how every single day we must work upon the Lord. How every single day we must strive to seek him, because he is our strength. He's our source of power. So going back to Noah, that is how he found grace in the eyes of the Lord, is because every day he sought the Lord. And each day, as he was told, as he was instructed to make that boat, regardless of what people said, he continued to build, and he didn't stop. He didn't stop a beat. He didn't, he did not listen to the words of the people, because clearly he didn't. He continued, and he finished what God asked him to do. And when that time came, because it took years, okay, years for him to complete this. So that was plenty of time for those people to get right, and they chose not to. So Noah and all that, it was him and his family. Only 8 people, okay, when it came to human beings, survived. Everyone else and everything that had a breath of life died, okay? Animals, of course, it was two of every kind. Can you imagine being stuck in this huge boat? Yes, it was huge at first, but imagine stuffing all those animals in there, how it stunk and everything. I mean, I couldn't even imagine. That'd be too much. But God said it has to happen, because everything, once the flood was and the waters disintegrated and everything went back to normal, then they had to replenish the earth, right? So, but imagine Noah's dedication and his integrity. It never was lost. He continued to do what God said. He listened. He obeyed him. And that's where that perfect walk with him, that's where it started. Is that if we obey the Lord and we abide in his word, we abide in what he gives us, and we seek him each day, that's where that comes into play. Okay? Because at first, when you hear perfect, you're thinking, oh my goodness, that means nothing, that you can't get out of line, like if you make a mistake. No, we're going to make mistakes. We're going to have things happen. We're human beings. We got to combat our emotions. We got to combat daily life and difficulties and struggles. It's there. It's going to happen. So we have to acknowledge that. That's the most important thing, is for us to acknowledge that. Okay? But anyway, why Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord? He was a just man. Righteous. He was perfect in his generations. And as I said, not that he was sinless, but there was no blatant fault. As I said, each day, if he made a mistake, he went to the Lord. He went to God each and every day. He sought the Lord, because God blessed him. God showed his love for him. So he was a man of moral integrity among the people. He walked with God. This is how he manifested his righteousness and integrity. In walking with God, he imitated the example of Enoch. We know Enoch, his great-grandfather. Walking with God in Noah's case likely involved calling upon the name of the Lord, offering sacrifices to God, which began in the days of Cain and Abel. This was what Noah did. And for us, those things are done away with. Those are old traditions. When Jesus came upon the earth and he sacrificed himself, he was the perfect example. So therefore, we don't have to go and get an animal and sacrifice it to God. We don't have to do that. No. And can you imagine, when I thought about it as a little kid, I thought to myself, man, that would have to be really hard. Because not only did you have to go after an animal, okay, it had to have no spots, it had to have no blemishes, it had to have no ailments, nothing, okay? Can you imagine getting one, you're like, oh man, it's sprained, it's got an ankle sprain, great, I gotta go find another one. I can't use you. The animal's probably like, you know? So imagine having to go through that whole process of trying to get one, okay? And then once you get it, then you gotta be able to kill it. Then you got to be able to get all the stuff for, the rest of your materials. That's a lot of work. And that's for you, okay? For you. Imagine the rest of the family. Good thing we don't have to do that no more. Jesus made the way that he demolished those very things. He was the perfect sacrifice. He was the perfect sacrifice because he was blameless with no sin. Our sins were placed upon the cross. Upon him, he took it all. He knew no sin, but he took our sins in replacement of our own. So we didn't have to go and do what he did. He did it for us. So through that, his sacrifice, that's where our salvation came in. Okay. So going back to this, imagine, that's where I say with Noah, he had to do all of that. He had to do sacrifices, burnt offerings, all of that. He kept his integrity. Imagine hearing the voices, all those people telling him that he couldn't do this, or he was crazy, and oh no, there's no way that God told you to do that. All that, and he still kept his integrity, and he still was instructed by God. He listened and obeyed the word of God, and you saw where it led him, because there he was in the ark, and God shut and closed the ark door. So he sealed it shut. Not Noah. Noah was there, and he's probably just, can you imagine, they're standing there and you just see it close by itself. You're like, whoa, you know. But God said, when God says something, he keeps his word. And so therefore, as he keeps his word, he expects us to do the same. So that's where that reading in the Bible, that's where praying every day comes into play. We know that those two factors there, with faith, of course, you must have faith in it. That's how you're going to be able to each and every day. If you got to take day by day, do it. If you got to take hour by hour, it depends on what we're dealing with. We all have to go through difficulties. We have to go through trials, temptations, all sorts. As we see the days approaching, as we know we're in the end times, Satan's going to get more and more aggressive in his tormentation, because he knows that where he's leading, that's where he's staying. So he wants everyone else to be miserable too. So anyway, Noah did according to all that the Lord commanded him. So we learned from the writer of Hebrews that this obedience of Noah came from none other than faith. Okay, again, faith. Faith is the main factor here. Is that it doesn't matter. You can be given all these materials. You can be given all those very things, but you have to believe in what you're doing. You have to put, not only your heart, but you got to know that this is going to happen. And through the Lord, it's only going to happen through God. You got to have trust and faith in it. When Noah did all these and God gave him these instructions, he believed and had faith that, you know what, it may seem crazy. It may seem like there's just no way that this flood's going to come. He took the words of the Lord and he ran with it. He respected God. And he said, you know what, God, nothing's too crazy in your eyes. You've done all these miracles in my life. You've blessed me. So what's different now? I just have to take it by faith. And he did. He took it by faith all those years. I mean, how many years it took him? Whew. Anybody, okay? This is why our relationship with Christ has to be strong. Because whatever we're dealing with, okay? And as I'm using this as an analogy, this really happened, but I'm saying I'm going to use this. Imagine we're instructed by God, okay? As we're told, as the end times are here, it is here. We're living in it. God tells us that we must each and every day keep ourselves close with him, strengthen ourselves every day because he is coming. So with that, as we feel the flood is coming, when it rains, you could smell it in the air, right? As we know that we're in the end times, we can smell it, we can see it, we can feel it. It is thick in the air. We know it's coming. We don't know the day or the hour, but we know it's coming. So just like that, we must keep ourselves faithful and watch and sober so that when that time does come, we'll be ready and prepared. And you'll have many scoffers in the last days than we have it now. People will say, oh, well, this has been for many years and it's never come about. Oh, it's coming. You got to be prepared for it. It's like you think by just seeing your physical eyes, alone is just going to help you out. We've had many people in history try to give the exact date, okay, an hour when the Lord's coming. And guess what happens? It comes around, the Lord didn't come because no one knows the hour, okay? People will try to go through history and try to read between the lines, and they will drive themselves crazy, literally, to try to get an exact date. No one is going to know, okay? People, if someone comes to you, okay, and they say they're a prophet, they say they are a man or a woman of God, and they say they're going to give you an exact date, don't believe it, because they do not know, okay? God tells many times, he even says that he's coming like a thief in the night. Why would he say that if he was going to give somebody an exact date? He's coming like a thief in the night. We're not going to know when that's going to occur. He's coming, but you don't know when he's going to occur. A thief comes like sporadic. They're not going to say, hey, they're going to call you up or knock on your door. Hey, I'm coming back to this house. I'm going to come at night at 9:00. Okay. So just be ready. If you want to leave your door open or unlocked, you can. I'm going to be coming in. Do you think they're going to tell you that? No. A thief is going to come in unexpectedly when you least expect it. They're not going to come up in a schedule and say, I'm going to steal stuff in your house. Okay. I'm just letting you know. They're not going to do that. Okay. So how this goes with today, I'm just thinking about it, just the scenario there, it's hysterical. But in a serious note, okay, that's where God is telling us that we must be ready. Just as he said that the abruptness of that thief in the night that you don't expect, and you'll be sleeping in your bed. The same applies to how he's coming and how he's taking his saints. Okay, so we got to be ready. We got to be prepared. You don't want to be left behind. You don't want to be wake up and look and you'll feel and you'll know. You want to be ready. Because once that is, you know the truth, nothing but the truth. You can't go back, because people say, "Oh, I didn't know." Yes, you did. You sure did, because God says that after the last person hears the word, that's when he's coming. Everybody. People even on islands, okay? There's people out there that people will go to these islands and find people. They'll even have little radios. Yes, I'm telling you, God makes it accessible for all people to hear the word. God makes all things possible. So people from all around the world will hear the word, okay? They will hear. God makes it possible because he wants all those to have a breath of life, just like those that were on the earth when in Noah's time. He wanted them to hear it. Now they heard the word. They heard it every single day after all those years. Their whole family, the generations, and after they heard it, but yet they rejected that word, and they lived by that rejection. That was their choice. God's not going to force you. He's going to provide all the things for you. He's going to give you everything laid out on the table. You have to be the one to take your arm and pick it up yourself. People will say, "Oh, well, I need help." Listen, you're making that vital choice. All right? And I always bring my children up in this, and I always say it all the time, and they know it every time I say it. I will tell them a specific instructions on something. I'll tell them, "Okay, listen, here's the rules. Here's our classroom rules. You are not to do this. You are not to do that, but you can do this." Well, the children already know the rules, because they'll tell each other sometimes when the other one forgets. So they will go and the one that knows, okay, and that knows all the rules and does it every day. Well, one day they decide, "You know what, I'm going to be a rebel because so-and-so gets to do it. I want to do it too, So I will catch them and I'll say, "What are you doing? I told you, is that what we're supposed to be doing right now?" "Well, so-and-so made me do it." I said, "No, they didn't." I says, "Because you knew what you were supposed to be doing, and you know that that's not what I asked you guys to do. Every day, this is what we do. Every day we have a routine. So they can't make you do that. They can't. You took your hand." Okay, and I get really animated with the kids, okay? I really do. And I guess that's why they love me. I don't know. But I'll say, "Okay, now I'm going to be like so-and-so. Now, I said we're supposed to be doing this." And I'll give scenarios. "Are we supposed to be doing this?" And I'll try to do the little things, and they'll say, "No." I said, "Okay, well, guess what? So-and-so over here said that they made them do it. But whose hand? I'll go to that child's hand. I says, "Whose hand touched that object?" And they'll say that child's name. I said, "Okay, was their hand on their hand?" "No." You can't no one can make you do something. You make that vital choice to do it, especially when you know you're not supposed to do it. Okay? So they're going to have people in these days that will also say, "Well, I didn't have a ride to go to church, or I didn't have that to do this. Well, so-and-so." No. You can't do that. Everyone has a choice they make. You make the effort, okay? You're the one responsible, because at the end of the day, each and every one of us are going to be judged accordingly. Each one of us individually, okay? Even though if you have a spouse, you're going to be judged individually, okay? You are a separate person. Even though you are one, you're each going to be judged accordingly, the rights and the wrongs, okay? You can't say, "Oh, well, so-and-so made me do it." No. Your hand did it. Your voice said it. They couldn't speak for you. You did it. So, and that's what I try to bring to my children in the classroom, and they know. It's something that we get a kick out of it, though. I do get animated with the kids because I want them to see an example and make it fun too at the same time. But still, on the one that did wrong, I let them know, "Don't do that again. Let's do better." I know, and I always tell the kids, "Listen, as long as you try your best, okay? Because we're going to make mistakes." And I said, "Did you listen to that voice?" And they'll just look at me, and they do answer and say, "Yeah." I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, we know not to do that. Let's try better next time. Let's help each other out, So they understand. Look, they're kids. But let's say us, even us adults, sometimes, you say to yourself, oh, a kid will do that. But guess what? Sometimes us adults make decisions, and, you can't really nod your head at that child because we're the same way. In God's eyes, we're his children. We are his children. So there's times we got to learn our lesson at times, especially when he tells us to do something or not to do something. We make that vital choice. Guess what? We got to live with that choice, you know? But the great thing about God is that he is loving and gracious, and he gives us opportunities. He provides us ways to get ourselves back in line, and also to help others too, so they can get in line as well. And they can get on that boat so we can all be ready. So, God provides many chances, opportunities for people. The very people you never thought, because we say to ourselves, and as a child myself, when I grew up living in the church and just growing up in the church and hearing the word. And there was times I said to myself about the Israelites, saying, man, they did all this to God, and yet God still gave them another chance, and they did this, this, and this. But when you really sit down and think about it, they were an example, okay? An example of God's grace, an example of God's love and mercy towards us all. He did that for those people. But he provided a way of salvation, not just for them, but for the whole entire world. But they were a living example for us to look at and say, look how gracious God is. Oh, God is, as a father, as a parent, he's going to reprimand you. He's going to judge you. He's going to punish you. But guess what? He's doing it with love, and he's telling you, giving you that opportunity. All right, now let's fix it now. Let's get back to where we need to be. Let's do what we're supposed to do. Now that let's work on that. So God is loving. People don't understand. People automatically think that all he is just fire and brimstone, and that's it. But no matter what, as you look at it, as you read the Bible, you go through history and through this word, many times God expresses his love. Okay? God, shows his love and mercy for all. Put it back to Jonah and the whale. You remember that? Remember the people of Nineveh? They were the ones that did awful things against the Israelites. And Jonah was not willing to forgive them, but God instructed him to give them the word, to warn them of the judgment he was going to put upon them, to give them the opportunity to get right. And Jonah was just scratching his head, shaking his head like, but these are the very people that hurt your own people. Like, how can you? And he knew that God was going to forgive him. So that's how you know how gracious and how loving God is, to be willing to forgive those that did and hurt his very own children. Do you see that? And that's not just one occasion. Many occasions, if you read through the word, you're going to find that God gives ample choice opportunities and openings for people to come to him. And they'll have all those opportunities, but guess what? After so long, he closes it up. Either by you living in that sin and being reprimanded or reprobate mind, or it's by your own death. It happens. It has happened. Okay, but you can't say God has not provided you the opportunity, as we have today. God has given us right now. It's the day. Every day is a day of salvation. God has given every single person the opportunity to receive him in our heart, to receive him in our heart. Okay? Just like we know the ark, we're building that right now. We're preparing, as the Lord's preparing our home. He's preparing everything for us, for our eternal paradise, in heaven. So just as he's doing that, he's preparing it for us, for those that are believers, and for those potential believers that want to come to the Lord. He's given that right now. He's given the opportunity. All you have to do is just accept him. And it's just by the sinner's prayer. But most importantly, as we said about Noah, how everything he did was through faith. In this prayer, you must do it with faith. You must believe in what you're saying. But it doesn't require a lot of faith. No. If you know what a mustard seed is, the Lord just asked just a grain of that mustard seed. Just faith as small as a grain of that mustard seed. That's all he requires. Just that little bit. And guess what? Once you receive him in your heart, you accept him, and you each day is faithful, you seek him every day, guess what? You're gonna grow so much. You're gonna then look back and say, how did I end up down there? How was I there? Because you were blind. But it all starts here. You want to give your heart to the Lord, as we have it free. I'm not asking you for payments. It's free. It's always been free. The one that paid the price was Jesus Christ. He placed his blood. His blood was the price for us to live. Okay? So if you want to receive him, all you have to do is just repeat these words after me. Dear Heavenly Father, I come to you a sinner. Wash me in your precious blood. Take this heart of stone to be made flesh, that your words may be sown in it. I've accepted you, Jesus, as my personal Savior. In Jesus Christ's name I pray. Amen and amen. If you believe that with all your heart, you are saved. Okay? You are now a child of him. You can see. And as I said, as we work on every single day, as you go, as you're faithful, as you seek the Lord every day, make sure you read your word. Make sure it's King James, of course. You can go on your phone, download the Bible app. It is right there. You want a physical Bible? Go ahead. You can go online, Google, and get that physical Bible. But the great thing about it is you can receive it right now on your phone. Everyone's got a phone. Download that Bible app. It's right there for you. You can have it read to you. You can read it yourself. It's there. The Lord provides us every single way to hear his word. And make sure you pray. That's talking to the Lord. If you need help, you need instruction, you need guidance, he's there. Now the door is open. You're no longer in the darkness. He sees you, and therefore now he can work within you. But as I said, every single day you must be seeking God. Every single day you must say to yourself, Lord, what do I do now? Help me, guide me. And he'll be there for you. You just have to be willing. But anyway, thank you guys for tuning in today. I hope you have a great morning, evening, wherever you are in the world. Again, I'm Assistant Pastor Dinah Ramos. Thank you.